My first experience with vinyl was really just basically looking through my dad's stuff and just realising, just being absolutely mesmerised by sort of the format and the way that it all looked, and just having this thing to hold, really, because at the time I don't think even the CD was there. It was that or a tape cassette, and the difference between the tape cassette and the vinyl was just so measurably large that I was just automatically drawn to the vinyl. I remember rooting through and picking up my dad's copy of Sgt. Pepper's and just being absolutely taken in by the cover, and then him teaching me how to put it on the sort of a turntable.
First record I ever bought was Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames, Bonnie and Clyde, on 45.
My first experience with vinyl was flicking through my dad's records when I was a kid and scratching. It's one of his favourite 7-inches, and putting a big scratch down it and getting him into a lot of trouble. So that was my first experience. So I think I've always had a bit of it's had this kind of mystical kind of like fear element, because the first interaction I had with it was a bit of a negative one.
The first record I had bought for me was when I passed the 11 plus in 1971, was The Faces Is Not As Good As a Wink to a Blind Horse. That was the first record I ever had bought when I was 10.
I used to like listening to vinyl, with my parents. You always had to look after it and treat it well, whereas CD, you could it's much more disposable. But I was always interested in vinyl, I always liked it. But I had a record player before I had vinyl. I didn't collect vinyl before I could listen to it.
When did I buy my first vinyl? It was 1958. It was at Everly Brothers, Cathish Clown, 45. That's my first vinyl, but before that there was 78, I don't know, it was just, that's all you could buy anyway, You couldn't buy any tapes or CDs then.
It was quite recently. I think it was a Katie Tunstall vinyl, because you get a B-side that wasn't with the CD, so I bought that and I preferred the sound on the vinyl.
My first vinyl I bought would be, I think I went back and I bought some Beatles vinyls from, I don't think they're originals, but I grew up listening to country music because of my parents, but my sister got me into the Beatles. It was a bit more modern. So I went back into a vinyl shop and just started buying CDs, but my dad had a record player. Started buying vinyls and I found it a bit more traditional. And I preferred having the big pictures, and it seemed a bit more physical, it's more tactile having a record player. And I just felt it was more traditional. I preferred buying records because also more rare. You can't buy everything on a vinyl. So whatever you can buy, I do buy on a vinyl.
Obvious things about vinyl is the quality of the record's a lot better. It's analog, so everything that gets recorded is there in grooves, whereas with a CD everything's compressed to put through. Everything's shrunk down and then sized up again, so it doesn't sound nearly as warm.
You can't beat vinyl, especially LPs. You can't beat the cover, the artwork, and you don't get that on CDs because they're too small.
It was the covers really that first attracted me to the music, but now obviously as I've learned more over the years, it's more about the music rather than the covers. But I'm still totally addicted to vinyl, and CDs just don't cut it for me really.
There's just something magical about it. It's not just the audio quality, it's the feeling that you get when you actually pick it up. I think that's especially with an album like proper 12-inch. You know, it feels like you're actually, and then the smell of it, you know, when you rip it open and you just touch it for the first time, and the way that if it brushes against the back of your arm, it makes your hand, like, hairs stand on end, and then you put it on and the rest is either brilliant or, like, I've bought some Duff ones in my time. I think everybody has. You know, where you pick up a record and you think, oh, why'd I have to spend money on that? But, you know, for every Duff one, there's 3 things. Like, I like buying vinyl. A lot of it is music that I like. I think that with vinyl especially, though, I tend to buy albums that I've never even heard of, just on a bit of an off chance, you know. And I don't know, there's just something intriguing about that you don't really get if you're flicking through like iTunes or something like that. You don't really click on the artists that you don't know. When you're in a record shop and you're just sort of there and it's in the moment and it's in the sort of subsection of music that you really, really quite enjoy, and you just find something and you don't know why, you don't know whether it's the sort of aesthetic of it or the way that it's been described or anything, but just something makes you make that sort of purchase on that thing that you've never heard, and often it can come back and it can, like, change you entirely.
I'm a vinyl nut enthusiast, lover of vinyl. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just it's probably what everyone says. But it's the tangibility of it. It's the romance of the needle hitting the wax. It feels authentic and real, and it's got that kind of mystique to it. Just on a kind of a physics level, how that piece of plastic creates music is just quite romantic, and I think that music, in terms of the album being a kind of a key way that music's presented, is just imbued in vinyl, and that's where it came from, and the way that it presents artwork and the invention that created in terms of ideas of how an album was presented as a format, especially in the 1960s, was really, really exciting and created that kind of link between music and art. I think it's incredibly important.
Piece of history, really. If you pick them up from like second-hand shops or vintage fairs and someone's used it before, you can see who's used it. Like, whereas you'd never think of buying like a second-hand CD, would you?
It's like something you can see it, can't you? You can get all of it. It's just the artwork. It's the just playing. It's a warmer sound as well. I like CDs, but vinyl's a warmer sound, you know, I think. And some of them will go up in price as well every year, you know. It's also like an investment as well, you know. Better than money in the bank nowadays, I think.